What's up, everybody? This is Elemento, and this is Technoscope, the channel for all things tech and gaming hardware. Today, we're going to discuss a video that I came across. Now, I was actually on Twitter about 2 or 3 days ago. Might have been a little longer than that. And most of you that follow this channel enough know that I'm a follower of Barnacules. And he posted a Twitter post. It was pretty straightforward, kind of upset, aimed at Mark Cuban, talking about comments that he made towards net neutrality. And I can't really quote what Barnacules said because I don't really remember, and I haven't brought up the tweet. So the main point was that Barnacules, Mark Cuban made statements that were pretty damaging towards net neutrality, and I didn't really see what was going on at the time, and I didn't really understand what was going on, but I remember him being very upset about it and tweeting Mark Cuban, this is wrong. You shouldn't be doing this, and more or less to sum up what he was saying. So when I came across it today on my recommended videos on YouTube, I decided I would go ahead and take a look. And we're going to go ahead and using what is the name of it? Fair use, basically. I'm going to go ahead and play snippets of this video to try to show you what was going on and what you should be looking out for. I guess I should go ahead and say this much. Mark Cuban, I've known about Mark Cuban since he bought the Mavs, which was back in I think 2000, something like that. And not only am I a Mavericks fan, because I am in Dallas. I grew up in Dallas, and the Mavericks are the home team. But I've kind of been like a Mark Cuban fan because a lot of what he does are things that I think are respectable, very respectable. And I've had nothing but the utmost respect for this man for the longest, and he's kind of like a guy that I look up to. So when I came across this video, it did really kind of hurt some to see that he was giving out this misinformation. Now, I don't know if what he says, his misinformation, if he actually believes that stuff or if he's been misinformed, somebody's told him wrong, or these are self-serving interests, and I'll get to why that could be in a little bit. But the biggest thing is that the video has a lot of him saying things in ways that are misleading, or if you're not careful and watching closely, they can make you believe that he thinks things are a certain way when they really aren't. But let me go ahead and I'm gonna play the clip. I'm gonna play the video, piece by piece, not necessarily the whole thing. It's only a minute 30 seconds long, but I'm gonna play portions of it, and I'm gonna stop it when I need to tell you why I think whatever he said was wrong and what you should really know about it. Just keep in mind, guys, this guy, he's a very powerful man, and much like myself, there are a lot of other people in Dallas and across the nation that respect him because he has been through it all, he has done it all, and he has, brought himself up from just being average person to a billionaire. So us business people really look up to him. So he does have a following, like it or not. But anyway, let me go ahead and switch over, and we're going to show this video clip. Let's see if I can. So this right here is on TheBlaze TV, and this is a clip of the
It's
a segment of the interview that he did. Um, and actually,
Not
I have no
inconceivable,
way
and I
to
would tell you
make
that
sure the
someone will
audio is
sue and it
working.
become likely that they'll say you have to combine all that bandwidth together. So if you're getting 100 to make it easy, 6 megabit.
Okay. Sorry about that. There's no audio feedback on my end from this. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna just let it play through, and I'm gonna go back and tell you what he said versus what I believe.
Tell you that someone will sue and it become likely that they'll say you have to combine all that bandwidth together. So if you're getting 100 to make it easy, 6 megabit channels, so you have to combine HD, all that bandwidth. That's 6 gigabytes. So if that's 6 gigabytes, if you say, you know what, you can't just deliver all that for television, we want to open that up to the internet so all the Glenn Becks and Blazes can deliver their over-the-top video in an equal manner. Now all of a sudden you have 6.1 gigabits available in this example.
You have to fracture it to everything.
Yeah, and it's just open internet. Now all of a sudden your traditional television, and so if I'm getting Blaze on my big bad cable, provider, might start buffering. And I probably need new equipment in my home that maybe the government is going to force you to buy, but it gets worse.
Okay, I'm gonna stop it right there because he said something that really, really, really got to me at that point. I can at least read the words. I can't hear the audio, but I can at least read the words. This big thing about the cable companies being forced to combine service. Now he did say that it could happen, but the way that he said it really made it sound like he's saying this is what's going to happen, because I had to watch the video at least 2 or 3 times before I actually caught that he's saying this is a possible scenario, not this is what's going to happen. So this means the internet will be slower. The Game King saying this means the internet will be slower than what we have now. If net neutrality is repealed, or this Freedom Act that they're pushing, it gets passed, then it could very possibly be slower than it has now. And what's really upsetting to me is that I have gigabit internet, and for me, I can't watch YouTube videos in 4K without them buffering on my gigabit internet. But if I was to download a 4K video, it would take, maybe 5 to 10 minutes to download an entire movie in 4K. But I can't stream 4K on YouTube. So, yeah, they're already buffering stuff, but it's just going to get worse if they repeal it. But getting to what Mark Cuban said, he was saying that if they keep it as Title II, which makes internet a utility, then that would mean that cable TV suddenly gets bundled with internet, and it becomes this one entity somehow that makes it where you're watching cable TV and cable TV starts buffering. No, that's not going to happen. That's not going to happen any more than your water company is going to start offering phone service, or the power company is going to become your TV provider. That's not going to happen. They are classified as utility companies because they use public land and public property to deliver a service, and they get certain rights of way that otherwise they would not have. That's pretty much the only thing that Title II really does. It sets out for that, and it also makes it so that they can't say that you can use it for specific things. Like, I have water coming to my house. I can use my water for whatever I want to. I have electricity coming to my house. I can use my electricity for whatever I want to. If they were not classified as utilities, they could say, we're gonna limit your electricity so that you can use certain items. But if you want, to use it for a refrigerator, or use it for a bigger freezer or something, or use it for a Keurig or luxury items like that, they could charge more money. They could say, for your water company, you can use water to drink and for your bathroom, but anything else, there's a luxury tax on. They can't say that stuff because utilities are classified in such a way that they are delivered to your house and you do what you want to with them. And that's pretty much what the FCC was doing with Title II classifying the internet. Now, let me tell you why he's wrong about them bundling it together. Your cable, I guess I should explain what cable is, first of all. The coax that comes to your house, if you have traditional cable service, is not like a typical wire. Have you ever wondered why they can get away with a single wire in that, whereas HDMI has 19 wires and pretty much any other connection in your house has multiple wires in there? But if you get this coax, it has one wire coming out the middle. Have you ever wondered why that is? Well, the reason is cable uses a technique that we in electronics call multiplexing. There are other terms for it. It can be named different things, but more or less, this is multiplexing is what's taking place. The wire that comes on a coax is not a typical wire in the typical sense. It's not sending a straight one-to-one signal. The wire in a coax cable is a waveguide, which means it takes a bunch of different frequencies, combines them all together, puts a shield around the outside. That's what the extra wires are for that you sometimes see popping out of the connector. Shields all that stuff to make sure that all those frequencies stay within or around that wire and they travel from one end to the other. On your cable service, it's no difference. They have a frequency for your internet service, or in this day and age, probably multiple frequencies. But that's like saying that your internet could make your TV buffer. It's like saying that watching Channel 5 and having Channel 5 and Channel 4 on the same coax could cause Channel 4 not to work because Channel 5 needs more signal. That has never happened. You have literally hundreds of channels now going through a single coax wire, and none of those channels interfere with each other. Those channel are different frequencies, and they're all sent down the same coax. And all cable internet is special channels added to your coax that send data for internet service. It's no different than how the cable company talks to your cable box. They can send, when you order pay-per-view or something, they can send a signal from what they call the central office to your cable box and tell it, hey, he paid for this programming, let him watch it. And that signal doesn't interfere with anything else you watch. That's already happening. That's been happening. That was happening long before cable internet was a thing. So this idea that somehow your internet service and your cable service are going to intermingle, no. Now, to take that one step further, internet service is two-way communications. You send data, you receive data. Cable TV is a broadcast service. There is no two-way communication about it. You are sent, it is digital signal now. You are sent packets instead of just a analog frequency. But there's no two-way communication about it. If you don't get that packet, you just don't get that packet, and the cable box moves on to the next one. That's why sometimes you lose the picture in cable, but it picks up later on versus being on YouTube, whereas if you lose your signal, it starts buffering and then it'll pick up exactly where you left off. It's completely different technology. They're not even close to being compatible. One of them is a broadcast, one of them is a streaming service or a two-way communication service. And one of the things that that really disgusted me about this video is that Mark Cuban knows that. He may not be completely up on electronics like I am. I actually have an electronics degree. But this man does know a fair bit about computers, networking, programming, and all this. I mean, he got rich off of making this broadcasting company that broadcast over the internet back when MP3s were basically new. He did online radio and stuff, so he knows this technology. He sold his company to Yahoo and made billions. So it's not like he's completely out of touch, but he's kind of misleading people. I'm gonna go ahead and play the rest of this video. There might be something else I need to talk about in here.
Right? So now, if all video delivered could be perceived as television, right? Because it's all in the same pipe. Bits are bits. No matter what anybody says in government, no matter what any technologically savvy person says, bits are bits. They don't care if it's text.
And right there, he's saying bits are bits, and yes, that's true. But I just told you why that is a bad assumption to make. Again, internet communication requires two-way communication. You have to be able to send, you have to be able to receive. Cable TV is broadcast only. You have one central office, and it sends out the signal to hundreds, thousands of people at one time, and they never lose any packets because one person is, slower to receive his packets than everybody else. It doesn't happen that way.
Data or video, whatever it is, it's just a bit. And you have your pipe that's allocated in different ways, through a lot of different mechanisms. But net neutrality at its base says all that data should be delivered together and no one should have priority. So if there's no priority for television and it's just part of the open internet and delivery, your traditional television watching the evening news,
it's over.
It's over, right?
Okay, again, I can't hear everything he's saying, but I can go a little bit off of what I saw in there. So they're saying that because of net neutrality, basically we're going to start treating everything, including stuff that's not related to internet service. We're going to start treating everything as the same. First of all, cable service, unless they add more channels, will not require more bandwidth than it already has. It just won't. They're always, whatever it has in the morning is broadcasting the same amount of data in the evening. There's no difference. There's no fluctuation about it. And internet service doesn't bother it one way or another. And if you remember, last month, Time Warner, or Spectrum, I guess now, and Comcast both suffered major outages. And if you were on one of those services, your TV service still worked, even without the cable internet. It doesn't need, they're not relying on each other. They're just traveling down the same path from the central office to your home. As a matter of fact, when the data is at the central office, leaving it or going out to the world or coming in from the world to the central office before it goes to your house, those two systems aren't even combined. They get combined on the way out the door. They're not even on the same network. Everything is completely different things. They don't want their internet service on the same network as the computers that determine what channels you get, because that would make it so easy for hackers to just get in and be like, hey, I want this channel, and click, 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 and all of a sudden you got it. That stuff is on a separate private network that you can't access, you can't get to. When it's coming to your house, that is on completely encrypted channels that are separate from what is delivering your internet service to your cable box. Let's see. The Game King says, so the FCC is ending net neutrality because of a bill they agreed on. We have to save net neutrality. I am concerned this would happen to TV as well. The Gamer King, you may not know what this is really all about. This is another thing I needed to bring up. I see that most people don't really understand the true nature of net neutrality and why this came about. This whole thing, regardless of everything that you have heard, is not about the cable companies wanting to control your internet service. They could care less. Honestly, it really wouldn't cost them that much more money to upgrade your service and give everybody across the nation very high-speed internet. It really wouldn't. The reason they don't do that, and the reason net neutrality is a thing, is because of cable service. This is getting into the other point that I wanted to make. Once our country reached a point where internet service became a super fast, easy to use thing, companies like Netflix came along, companies like Hulu came along, and YouTube, Amazon Prime, and a host of others, Vudu, and the list goes on and on and on. Those services are so good now that most people don't want to pay for cable TV anymore. Net, Netflix is raising their prices in January. Excuse me. Their price is going up for the 4K 4TV package from, I think it's $12. I think it's $11.99 right now, up to $13.99. That is far cheaper than any cable package out there. Just for, I haven't checked where I live now, but in my old house, to get the basic channels, the channels that I can get with an antenna, they wanted $65 a month on top of what I was paying for internet service. $65. I could get Netflix, Hulu. I already got Prime, but I could get Prime with that. This new one that Disney is rolling out, I could get a whole host of other services that give me 24/7 content I want to see, 24/7 content that I like, that I want, that I can actually choose to play when I want to play it, and just completely custom how I want it for the price that they want to charge for basic channels that I can get from an antenna. The problem is so many people are cutting the cord these days and just going straight to internet and internet services that it is hurting their bottom line. Cable TV has been a big money maker, and it's hurting these companies that have gotten used to living off the revenue that is made. And to fight all the things that cord cutters are taking their money away from, they're trying to slow down the internet. They're trying to put restrictions on it. They're trying to more or less make it more difficult for you to be a cord cutter. And if it came down to it, they would just outright block Netflix, Hulu, and the services that you love, effectively putting me out of business because my platform is YouTube, and I can't. I mean, I'm even having trouble just checking my own videos for quality, because when I try to play the 4K videos back, I get buffering on my end. I got gigabit internet. That should not be a thing. But yeah, Comcast is actually, most people don't know this, Comcast is actually one of the biggest lobbying companies in the world, or in the country, for in Washington D.C. They spend tens of millions of dollars every year, basically trying to keep controls in place that keep people from switching from cable to internet streaming services. And this is just their big, this is kind of like their Super Bowl. If they win this, then they can do whatever they want to, and pretty much they're just going to limit everything, any video watching that you do, so that they can go ahead and charge you to get you back on cable. One of the things that some people don't understand, you should understand this by now. Cable TV service comes in packs, and the reason it comes in packs is because most of those channels are only niche channels that very select few people watch. Those channels, I'm not gonna say most of them, but a lot of them cannot get by on the money that they make just by their viewers alone. They need to be bundled in with other packages, other bigger channels that people want, so that they can get a share of the revenue, so that they can continue to operate. So, I kind of feel bad for them, but at the same time, that's not my responsibility to make sure that they, have food on their table. If you got a business, and I'm a businessman myself, the number one rule of business is you either change with the times or you die. Ask Blockbuster. They know that lesson very well. I really can't say anything about that. And I'm sorry, guys, I've been leaving you on this on that big screen for all this time. I should have had you on this screen. But yeah, it really struck me the wrong way. I mean, I'm not going to say I'm like the biggest follower of Mark Cuban. I don't know everything about his life, but I have followed his life, quite a bit more than the average person. since he bought the Mavericks back in 2000. I saw him come out on stage at a local concert one day shortly after he bought the team and, greet the crowd and everything. And people in Dallas really, for the most part, love Mark Cuban. He's been really good to the city, and he's been a great voice standing up for the people. But in this particular instance, I don't know. He's either very, very misinformed or he's just straight up lying. Oh, and that brings me to the other point. Let's see. Gamer King says, yeah, but with Time Warner Cable being involved in this net neutrality. Yeah, Time Warner is very involved in this. Because I know that other companies that have internet bundles were affected, right? Examples, Comcast, Dish, etc. Yeah, the biggest offenders were Comcast, Verizon, AT&T, and I think Time Warner was in there too. The last straw, like the straw that broke the camel's back, was when net neutrality was rolled out. It was because it was in response to those companies finally going after Netflix. That's really what happened. There's a graph you can look up on the internet that shows how there's this line of traffic that follows the line of growth of Netflix. And at this point, all the companies announced that they were going to start throttling Netflix unless Netflix paid them money. And you can see on the chart, it just takes a nosedive at the moment that they start throttling. And their claim was that they were doing this because Netflix traffic was so heavy, it was just causing trouble on their networks. Now I know that's bullshit. I, as an electronics major with a focus, my major was focused in telecommunications. I know for a fact that is all BS. Don't believe any of what they just said about that. But they said that Netflix was hurting their networks, so they had to throttle it. And the funny thing is that, okay, Netflix was like, well, while we fight this, we have to get our bandwidth back up, because people started leaving the service, which is what they wanted, which is what the cable companies wanted. People started leaving the service, so Netflix went to Comcast and paid them for prioritized traffic. And overnight, and I mean literally just within 24 hours, all of a sudden you see this gigantic spike in the chart where their traffic just skyrockets. And you might say, well, maybe they upgraded their infrastructure. No, they can't. They can upgrade it pretty quickly, but 24-hour rollout is impossible, even for Comcast. I mean, no, that did not happen. They more or less just decided, hey, we're just going to throttle this, and if we can't make money on cable channels, then we can make money off of cable services. And what really pisses me off about it is that you're already paying for this bandwidth. You're paying for this bandwidth monthly, but they're saying that unless the services that you're accessing with it pay as well, you're not going to get your full bandwidth. And that really pisses me off. And if you watched my other video, I used the analogy of going to a car wash, saying that you want to get your car washed, and they're saying that they use Mother's cleaners for cleaning cars. They use it a lot, so they go to Mother's and tell Mother's they have to pay as well, or they're not going to clean the entire car. I mean, in that instance, you would stop going to that car wash, right? You would just go to somebody else. Well, the problem is, because of government regulation and deals that have already been signed, you can't do that in most places. Over 50% of the country has one internet service provider. Or if they do have two, in a lot of cases it's one good service provider and then some BS alternative that really isn't worth anything. It's really God, I don't know. It's really, really annoying that they're just running around, and it almost seems like that there's no one there to take on these companies that are doing this stuff. Go and watch my other video because I don't want to reiterate everything I said in there, but there's a lot that you should know. The ISPs don't even move most of the data across the country. They're more or less from the central office to your house. The data, most of the data that moves across the country is these other companies. I think L3 is one of them. There's some other ones out there, but most of the ISPs don't control that stuff. They just buy the data from these other companies and then, go from their backbone to your house. But anyway, I just had to say this, man. I highly respect Mark Cuban. I mean, I've even, tried to see if I could get in contact with him, get him on my sports podcast, because that would be, to me, that'd be pretty cool. But when he starts saying things like that are just pretty much not true in any kind of way, I just can't let that slide. There's no way in hell that your internet traffic is going to affect your cable TV service. Oh, I needed to bring this up. I keep forgetting. The reason that Mark Cuban would, oppose net neutrality. I don't know if a lot of people know this, but there used to be this channel called HDNet. And Mark Cuban was actually one of the founders of this channel. He actually, him and I forget who else. Let's see who it says. Mark Cuban and Philip Garvin, owner of Colorado Studios and Mobile TV Group. They founded HDNet in 2001. These guys own this company, and they since renamed it to Access TV. But they own this company, and it's on cable, and it's one of those niche channels that if cable starts dying out, it's going to be one of the first channels to go. So Mark Cuban actually has a very, very legitimate business reason to want net neutrality to fail, because anything that hurts cable TV hurts his pocket. And as a businessman, I really understand that. I truly do. He's a billionaire. He's got to make his money. He needs to speak out in the best interest of his money. But as somebody who has been the people's champion for so long, it really hurts to see him, just get on this Glenn Beck show and start lying to the public, telling them all these lies. There's no way. There's no way that net neutrality is going to hurt cable TV, except for the fact that people now have a choice. And guys, that's really what this comes down to. They're trying to repeal net neutrality because they want to eliminate choice. You don't have a choice. You have to spend your money with them. You really have no choice, especially if you're in one of those towns, most places where there's only one internet service provider. Now, I should say this. Where I live has gigabit internet, and it had gigabit internet when I ended up moving here. But they had only had it for a short time. Before gigabit became a thing where I live now, it was a service. I think the fastest you could get was 18 down, 3 up. And I know this because there's houses right down the street from here that have that service. And I know that because I looked it up when we were looking for a place to move. This particular house and the houses around me just happen to be in the upgraded gigabit area. So why does this house have gigabit internet? Well, you're saying free market works, right? No. This house has gigabit internet because Google said they were going to move into the Dallas-Fort Worth area. The moment that they announced their plans to expand Google fiber here, those companies they all took notice, and AT&T, which runs the internet service where I live, decided to immediately, overnight, roll out gigabit internet. They already had the infrastructure in place. They just weren't giving people the service. So they turned it on, and people in my area and select spots in Dallas that have AT&T have gigabit internet now. So why did that work when it doesn't work in other places? Well, if you haven't heard the news, Google has since decided to go back on those plans. They have been fighting tooth and nail to get their fiber service rolled out because they don't have access to telephone poles or underground utility areas because Title II portion of net neutrality hadn't gone into effect yet, and they were basically at the mercy of AT&T. So they would have to, what they were doing was they would have to go to AT&T saying, we need access to these poles or these areas, so we need you to move your stuff out of the way so we can go in and put our stuff in. And AT&T was given 6 months for every area that Google requested. So AT&T waited 6 months before they did anything for every one of those areas, and it became a hassle that Google just couldn't fight anymore. I mean, they were even fighting in court because after a while, Google was like, we can do this stuff ourselves. So they went to court in certain places, and they won in some places and lost in other places. Where it's saying that you can go in and move the stuff yourself, and you don't have to wait on AT&T. And AT&T was very pissed about that and started fighting back. But the reason that I have gigabit is because Google was threatening to move in. They've canceled their plans, and they're not moving in now. But AT&T already threw the switch, so we have gigabit anyway. Now, something else I think is fascinating. Last week, a guy comes to my door from Spectrum. Spectrum was the other internet service provider here. You have AT&T. AT&T was here because they were the phone service. They ended up rolling out fiber, and they were doing the whole Uverse thing. Your cable company before internet was Time Warner, and it's changed names over the years, but right now it's Spectrum. So if you're not going through AT&T, you're going through Spectrum. Well, Spectrum is losing pretty much all their customers because they can't compete anymore because they have, their slow cable internet, which at the most I think you can get 300 up or 300 down and 10 up, whereas I'm pulling gigabit down and gigabit up. I could not stream this stream here on Spectrum, so I was really hoping that I didn't have to go with their service. But they've lost so many customers because of gigabit now. They're rolling it out. And I'm in a unique situation where I'm going to have, come next year, there's going to be 2 service providers offering gigabit internet here. And it's just a coincidence that there are 2 providers here doing this. If you're in a city like where I just came from, where Verizon was the one and only carrier, they did everything for you. You didn't have that option. So they have no, out there where I live, they don't have any plans to upgrade to gigabit. They have no reason to do it. They're the only carrier. Competition is good, guys. And don't let people lie to you about net neutrality, saying, oh, we don't want this as government regulations. But net neutrality is an effort to fix bad government regulation that's already in place. There is no free market in the internet right now. Don't let anybody lie to you and tell you there is. There isn't. Net neutrality is an attempt to put a Band-Aid on something that the government broke a long time ago, and they're trying to fix it. Well, they were trying to fix it until a Jeep Pie came in and decided he doesn't really care. If you don't know anything about Ajit Pai, he used to work for Verizon, and remember, Verizon was one of the first people to, one of the first companies to throttle Netflix. So, it's a bad situation all the way around, and it's funny because most of the country, pretty much everybody who's not in the pocketbooks of the cable companies, want net neutrality to not only live but to progress and become better, whereas these guys that are actually in control, which are by far the minority, want it to fail. They want to get rid of it. It's I don't know. But anyway, just remember that Mark Cuban does have a stake in this. I mean, Access TV is a cable company. I mean, they even show some of the Maverick things on there. Um, but just remember that he does have a stake in there, so you cannot really believe what he's saying when it comes to net neutrality. He does have an interest here, and it's a conflict of interest to have him speaking out about why you shouldn't want net neutrality when he's one of the people that will benefit from it going away. But anyway, if you have, do you have guys have any other questions or anything? Let's see. Gamer King says, I've heard exactly that people at local Verizon retailers are planning protests to save the net. I think all of these people are saying that they are planning a protest on December 7th. Hey, if you hear more about that, or if you find a link or something, link me to that because I'd like to know more about it. I'd probably go out to someplace locally if I can find something like that and film some of it, maybe even do a live stream. Let's see. According to The Verge, it is true about the pro. Hey, send me that link to The Verge. I want to read about that. If there's something they're doing in Dallas as well, I want to see if I can be a part of that or at least show up and get some shots. But anyway, guys, I just had to say something about this. I mean, no disrespect to Mark Cuban. I at this point, I honestly don't know if he just really believes what he was saying or if he's been misinformed. But what he was saying is just categorically false. There's none of that stuff is going to happen. Even let's just leave it at that. It's none of that stuff is going to happen. The cable system and internet system may come down the same coax, but they are two completely different systems. They do not interfere with one another. In fact, if you want to know a little bit more, look up Mocha and how Mocha works, because it works over the same coax as your cable TV and your phone cable modem. Although cable modem is supposed to be separate because Mocha can kill it. But Mocha operates alongside cable, and it allows you to set up a local network at your home, sort of like Ethernet, but using your coax instead. Verizon uses it a lot for file services. That's how all their boxes talk. Look it up. Mocha does the same thing. It talks across the network. It doesn't interfere with your channels. It doesn't block out anything. It doesn't make your cable buffer. Matter of fact, your cable will never buffer anyway. As I said before, it's a streaming service. If you lose a packet, you just lose the packet. It doesn't wait for it. But anyway, let's see. MDJ says, "What are good arguments against net neutrality you've heard?" I actually haven't heard any good arguments against it. Everything, because I know so much about the technology on this side of consumer communications. They haven't presented a good argument that I find worthy. I'm not the be all end all guy, but I know enough about electronics to know when I'm hearing BS. Most of that stuff that they say is straight up BS. Let's see if I can open this link. And we'll do this. Move this one over here. So from the Gamer King, pro net neutrality groups are planning protests at Verizon stores on December 7th. That's pretty interesting. I have not heard about that, but I'm going to actually read this article and look into it, because if there's a protest being held in Dallas, I definitely want to be there. I'll take my camera and everything, and I'll probably even interview a few people. I need to see this kind of thing in action. Verizon is one of those very, very, very evil companies, but somehow they get to stay out of the limelight. And I don't really understand why. And it's probably because they're paying somebody to do so. But if you've ever followed Verizon, and I've never had their cell phone service, but I followed it pretty closely because I knew people that had it. Occasionally, and I mean, it's almost like a quarterly. It's almost like it's part of their quarterly statements or yearly statements or something. They come along about once a year, maybe twice a year, and find a way to bend their customers over and screw them over royally. And I mean, it's very disgusting. They were the leadership on eliminating unlimited cell phone plans. They were the company that went out there and said we're going to get rid of this. And at first, it started with you just couldn't sign up for it anymore. And then after a while, they started pushing back against the people that were holding on to the plans until they finally got to a point where they just pushed them off a cliff and said, "Hey, find something else, or we're just going to charge you for this data plan." They really do give it to their customers. I had their FiOS service, which is probably the best thing they had going for them. But then they sold off FiOS in a lot of their markets to Frontier because they were unable to screw customers over as well on FiOS as they were doing with their cell phone service. So if you want FiOS, Verizon FiOS, I think there are a few markets up northeast. I think they still own it in New York and a few places. But as far as Texas, California, I think Florida, and a lot of their big major markets have been sold off to Frontier. So if they're holding, if they're holding this protest, December 7th, what is today's the 4th, so that would be, let's see, on Thursday. If I can find one in Dallas on Thursday, I'm gonna be there with the camera and I'm gonna interview people. I'm gonna find out how I'm gonna get their real feelings, and maybe there's gonna be a video in it. We'll see. But anyway, I guess there are no more questions. I just had to say that. Again, no disrespect to Mark Cuban. Unless he's like seriously trying to mislead people, but at this point in time, I have no proof that he's trying to mislead people. Although there is the evidence that he owns that TV channel. So, until I can get concrete proof that's what he's trying to do, I'll just leave it at what it is. Mark Cuban, if you ever see this video, come talk to me. This studio right here is the same studio we do sports cave in, so you can give me your opinion on net neutrality, and then the guys will ask you questions about the Mavericks. We can do whatever. I'm a man myself, so hey, you can only trust a businessman to do what's gonna be best for him. But anyway, I guess I'll see you later, guys. If you have any questions or anything, suggestions, comments, or anything, leave those down below. And I'll see you on the next video. I was going to show you something over there, but I'll leave that for another video. Talk to you guys later. My name's Elemento. This is Technoscope.